Hey guys, welcome back to the Fulco. Today we're going to be talking about yesterday's match against Aston Villa at home. We've come away with the result that we desperately wanted and we desperately needed against a rival, we'd argue a top four rival. And also it's capped a fantastic week. If you are to look at the week and where we were 7 days ago against Crystal Palace, it was very down. It was very doom and gloom among the Spurs fan base, as it probably should have been given the manner of the performance. But fast forward 7 days, advancing in the cup against a good Man City side and then beating Aston Villa very comprehensively at home, where incidentally I think Aston Villa had won 3 of the last 4 at our place, so good to see that turned around as well. It's definitely something that was very much required. It was the tonic that the fan base needed, and definitely good for the players and the staff as well. So let's dig into it as ever with a really good victory. There's a lot to get into. I think if we take the start of the game, we did okay in the first half. We weren't brilliant, and obviously we were 1-0 down. Which is a very common theme for Tottenham, and it's one of those things that if we can reverse it, if we can start to turn that around and not concede the first goal, then again, if we continue to put these attacking performances on, we might garner some clean sheets and we might get a few more of those games that we've not been able to turn in our favour, go in our favour. But overall, we weren't actually very bad in the first half. We did okay. Villa didn't have a huge threat, but I felt, and this is something I've talked about in other videos, we maybe lacked a bit of conviction in our attacking play at times, and I felt that played into Villa's hands. So Unai Emery had set his team out. Interestingly, he'd set them out to be quite low and mid-block, as opposed to really trying to press us, maybe thinking that, the quality of our counter press and then our transition game would be an issue for them. In the end, it turned out that we were still able to bring that to bear in the second half. But they sought to contain us, and they did that pretty well. Because we were a bit more hesitant in our attacking play, Aston Villa were able to double up on players. They were able to block channels and get into good positions to stop us from playing. And they were able to pickpocket us several times. There was a couple of occasions where they got kind of half chances or decent chances off the back of doing that, and then obviously got a goal from a set piece. So they would probably have been very happy with the way that their game plan was going, and therefore no reason for Emery to think that what he had planned for the game wasn't working. What I would have ideally liked to see is a bit more bravery, particularly down the left-hand side. Son continuously looked at that left-hand side and decided to come back inside, or we were playing very close with a tucked-in Udogie, or with the midfielders coming in and joining in and trying to move the ball, and eventually it would be snuffed out, or we'd run out of space, or we'd turn back, or they'd nick it. And in fact, there was one occasion, I think actually it was, we got the ball in the right-hand channel. Porro tried to play a ball across. It wasn't the best ball. And Villa stepped onto it, broke, and it led to a chance where Ollie Watkins played through on his left foot, but he ended up kind of sliding a shot quite far wide. But you'd say it was a chance. It was half chance. Then the other side of Villa's tactics were to delay and to time waste. And obviously that's all about breaking down our rhythm, and also affecting the spirit of us, the fans in the stadium, and how we feel. So we were getting edgy, we were getting antsy, we were booing, we were getting upset with Emi Martinez and the Villa players either rolling around or taking their time or delaying goal kicks and restarts. So it does work, and it interferes with our fluency. So if you add that up with the fact that we weren't necessarily being as brave as we needed to be when going forward with the ball. So for example, on that left-hand side, if we are going to continuously come inside, if Son doesn't even once threaten on the outside, he doesn't give Matty Cash or John McGinn, I think it was, that was supporting him, he doesn't give them anything different to think about. They keep doing the same things and they're getting success, so they feel positive about it. before we go to how we rectified that in the second half, we get to the goal. The goal in itself, there's two ways to look at it. We are considered to have a problem from set pieces, but statistically we've shown a great improvement this season. But I think just from watching Tottenham, and if you take a body of work since the beginning of last season until now, there are still issues that we have under the high ball. It's not an area of great strength for us, and I don't think we would necessarily pin this 100% on Vicario in terms of the goal we conceded this time. But I personally don't really like the setup from the second corner that leads to the goal. So if we look at the play, it started with a first corner from the opposite side, which is swung in. Vicario punches it away back to the corner taker. They then reload it, and it's a really kind of deep looping cross, which really favours a player like Onana, who's coming onto that, and he's a big guy. I think Dragushin does as much as he really can. I think it really was a ball that favoured the attacking player, and Onana heads it onto the post, and Vicario gets down, and you know, that's quite good. Dragushin does as much as he can to put his player off, so he's not got a clean header, and Vicario managed to get that ball that hits the inside of the post, knocks it out, and then I think Udogie knocks it out for the second corner. When the second corner comes in, what I didn't particularly like is the matchup. I didn't like the near post matchup. It starts with a bit of pushing and shoving of Brennan Johnson on Pau Torres by Vicario, but then you could see what they were working on was a ball swung into the near post, an in-swing with the left foot into the near post, and Pau Torres is the runner that goes across the front post. He's obviously looking for a flick on. And the matchup is Porro against Torres. So that zonal system, you see Torres coming into the near post zone, and then directly behind him is Porro. And I'm not sure that that's the right player to be there. I'll have to get hold of the highlights and watch it back a few more times to see exactly how it unfolds. But for me, if you've got, I think Solanke might have been the second player in the zone. For me, Solanke would arguably, you know, that Harry Kane role, clearing set pieces at the near post, might have been a better shout. If Torres is running across, I'd like to see Solanke aggressively attack and go with him. So I didn't like the setup. And what eventually happens is Porro goes up for it. He gets a little flick on it. I'm not sure if it touches Bentancur as well on its way through, but the flick on effectively forces Vicario down and into a save, and then the ball pops out as it will do, and the Villa player, Rogers, I think it is, taps it in. And that's one of those where, you know, if even though the first two contacts are Tottenham players, they are in dangerous areas. So it's almost like an attacking header onto a keeper who makes a save, and then it, you know, the ball spills out. So for me, it's more the kind of the zonal setup and the personnel and the management of it that I didn't like about the goal, as opposed to Vicario flapping at something or us not dealing particularly well with the situation. For me, it's more to do with the setup, and I think that's why that goal goes in. But it is what it is. We're 1-0 down, and we come out and we've got work to do. But thankfully, we did exactly that. So I think if you look at the second half performance when we came out, we were a bit more dynamic. We were a bit more committed. I think if you look at the midfield in the first half, I think Lolo had a really good game for his time on the pitch. He was doing all the right things. I was surprised actually to see him start over Biss, given the number of minutes he's played this week. He had a really good game, but there were just these, you know, he was just on that tipping point, which I think was set off by actually Romero. In terms of being on the wrong side, there was definitely a challenge that I think he could have got a yellow card in many other games that he didn't, and I think he was quite fortunate, and he was just walking a tight line, and I was just worried that we were about to lose our heads. But the reset at half time put us in a position to tweak a few bits and pieces. We're a bit more positive coming out, and kind of it changed the situation for our midfielders as well. So even though Lolo had done well and he had a few shots in the first half, kind of calmed the nature of the team down, and then we were a bit more controlled in our build-up and then more aggressive in our attacking play. And you could see that on the left-hand side for the first goal. Is this time I think Udogie decides to overlap instead of underlap, or come inside to play the ball, and Sonny whips an absolutely magnificent ball down that corridor of uncertainty that everybody loves, and that is the quality of delivery that he's got. He's back again after injury, but on his left foot, delivers with absolute precision and pace, and that's a horrible ball to deal with. The defenders, you can see the defenders hands up and hoping that Emmy's going to come out to it, but it's probably just too far for him to come, because if he comes, he's probably pushing it straight out into the middle of the penalty area. So he makes it routes him to his spot. He makes the decision not to come. It slides across the front of the defenders, and then it favours either Dom Solanke, who's sliding in, or Brendan Johnson, who's in at the back post, exactly where we want him to be, exactly where the coaching staff have trained him to be, and he side foots it in. Brilliant goal. Absolutely wonderful goal. Great to see. Simple in the way that it was constructed, and very, very high quality in its execution. Well deserved. That then raises everyone. The stadium really felt like a different place at that point. The crowd had really sparked to life, and it changed the nature of the game. And I don't think Villa then handled what came next very well. One thing I will say, and it is on that kind of critical side of things, is I felt that Romero throughout had a very poor game. I don't think he was good in the first half. I think Watkins had the beating of him physically. He kind of pounded him off the ball in the first half when Watkins was galloping down the left-hand side. He had that chance. I think that's the second half, early in the second half. And then he had that chance in the first half against Romero. I think Romero was rash. He started steaming into things in the first half. He gets himself a really silly booking for a challenge he didn't need to make. His, I would say, up and down form continues, but on much more on the negative side. I really think he was poor. This injury may or may not be serious. It may or may not have been self-inflicted for throwing himself into a silly challenge. But it's one of those that if Mickey weren't out, I would say it's a blessing in disguise. He needs to sit. He needs some time. He's not been having a great season so far. But unfortunately, with the number of injuries we've got, it is quite worrying. Although I will mention Ben Davies and put some respect on his name in a sec. So anyway, really, really disappointed with the way that Romero performed in this game. But the nature of the psychology of the game had completely flipped, and it didn't really matter. Even with him coming off, it didn't really matter. Tottenham were in the ascendancy. We were playing the attacking football. And then Davies is on the pitch, I think, for the second goal, because he then wins the ball. Villa get it. They play. They attack. And then Ben Davies steps in, and he's decisive. He steps in. He goes, wins the ball. The ball falls to Pap Sarr. I think Sarr plays it in. He drives on with it. He plays it into Johnson. Johnson takes a touch inside, which was lovely. So he could have continued, but actually Decky was right there in the number 10 position. And he plays an absolutely wonderful little reverse ball, which is exactly what you want from a number 10 in that zone 14. And Dom Solanke, lovely timing of the run. He's level with the last defender. And so you've got Decky reversing the ball one way. You've got Dom Solanke going the other way. Really, really difficult. These are those kind of rotations and movements that are really hard to pick up in the attacking spaces, because you're asking defenders to change positions and to move to places where they'll be leaving big gaps where they're standing. So moving defenders around, it's really hard to do. If you get it right, you end up with a good chance on goal. And then Solanke with a lovely dinked finish over the keeper. Really nice, calm and composed. I think this is a good point to stress what a good game Pap Sarr had. He, in the first half, was, doing his slash and burn finishing. He had a few goes from the edge of the box where he, hammered it up in the air and away and around, and, back to that kind of thing instead of the measured finish we saw in midweek. But his running power, his defensive duties, him intercepting the ball, carrying the ball, and then laying it off with quality, he was excellent. He had an absolutely fantastic game if you look at it as a whole. Still bits that he can work on, but he was superb. And you know, his running power allied with Dom Solanke's constant press really does make us really difficult, and it allows us to regain possession. It allows us to turn opposition possession into transition, even from a high press, which is great. That counter pressing is something we're really good at when those two are on the pitch, and then players delivering with quality, which is what we want to see. Third goal, similar kind of thing to the second goal. So Bissouma this time is on the pitch, and who I actually thought might start, but he came on and he played at a good level as well, and he played nice and calm and control, which is good to see. He stepped in, intercepted a ball that Villa were trying to play out. Okay, it fell back to Pau Torres, but then Torres plays a very risky ball. So he's playing through the lines in midfield, but he's playing across multiple vertical lines, and that is always going to favour a high pressing team like Tottenham. We step onto the ball against Sarr, reading it, steps across it. He's athletic, he's quick, and gets there. And a lovely first touch, so it doesn't bobble. He gets hold of that ball, secures possession, drives forward, and then plays Richie, who at this point had replaced Son, into that left channel. And then Richie, lovely. He could have gone for, you know, a big left foot finish, but instead he goes for a lovely little cut back across the box, and Dom Solanke just walks onto it and taps it in with his left foot. Son being brought off, I think quite a few people would have raised eyebrows about it, but it was pre-planned according to the manager in his post-match press conferences, which I totally understand. And even though Richie got himself injured in that phase of play and that cutback, which is obviously devastating for him and is going to be really difficult for the squad going forward in terms of numbers, it was the right thing to do. So the level of performance didn't drop at all. Richie came on, he had an impact, he gets himself an assist, and we managed to wrap Son in cotton wool because we're absolutely going to need him. It would have been devastating to keep Son on for longer and risk him, and then maybe even if the game is in our favour, we bring Richie on later in the game and then he gets injured and we've increased the load on Son and we've lost Richie. So in the end, the change worked out perfectly. Obviously the manager can't know that, but that's the consequences that I always talk about within football. You make a decision, you stick by it, and then you live or die by the results. He made the call, he went with it, and it worked out for us. So delighted for that. Obviously not delighted for Richarlison being injured, but glad that Sonny could come off and we could, you know, look after him, because we're going to need him. At this stage, we were all over Aston Villa. They really didn't look like they had any kind of a threat. The fight had gone out of them, and you know, there were a few long stoppages in the second half, but when I saw 10 minutes go up on the board, I normally miss the board when I'm watching, but I saw the 10 minutes go up on the board, and I was quite surprised because Villa were the architects of most of the time wasting. But again, there was no kind of rise. The Villa fans didn't really come to life when the board went up. I think they were done, and it played into our favour in the end because we managed to get another goal. So again, we moved the ball quickly forward. We pressed forward. The ball is played into Solanke on the edge of the box, and he's fouled by the substitute centre half for Aston Villa, and then just a really wonderful free kick from James Maddison. He takes a short couple of rapid steps and then whips it, starts it outside the post and then whips it just inside the post. Martinez gave him the entire side of the goal and invited him to put it there, and Maddison absolutely did. Now, you know, goalkeeping coaches and people that understand that side of the game might say that was a big enough wall, and you know, it was a risk worth taking. But Maddison certainly got the quality to whip it into that area. So I was quite surprised by how much of a head start Martinez offered Madders. But great to see him get a set piece goal. We don't score direct from free kicks. It's not something we're good at. But Maddison has shown throughout his career he's got quality off set piece delivery. So we'd like to see more of it. We'd like to see, when he's on the pitch, him doing more of that. And yeah, so delighted for him. And it's a confidence boost because he's been sat and he's been a sub. But he gets to come on and he gets to influence the game and have a positive impact. So that works in his favour as well. Kind of overall notes is we are a very, very good team at home. So that's excellent. The proof in the pudding is going to be when those bigger sides come. And again, I thought we were okay against Arsenal. We just lacked a bit of conviction in our own play, but we were okay. We didn't get played off the park. We obviously got beaten, but we need to turn these performances that we're putting out there against these bigger teams. So the Man City game in midweek, but we need Man City to come in the league. We need Liverpool to come in the league. You know, and other sides, other big sides, Chelsea particularly, need to come, and we need to put on these kind of performances. We need to show that we can do it against the big teams, to show that we've taken a step forward in what we're trying to achieve. Away from home, we're still a bit hit and miss, and we've shown that. So can we start to put a bit of these performances that we can generate at home? Can we start doing that away from home? Can we start dominating teams, or at the least creating these high percentage chances so that we can put games away? That's what we want to see. And then the next turn of the dial is keeping clean sheets and dominating at home. And then, okay, if we continue to concede goals away from home, but we are picking up, we're scoring enough goals to pick up draws and turn some of those into victories as well, then again, that's the next step forward in the project. And you know, this young kind of team and squad needs to demonstrate that going forward. Kind of the injury situation that we're facing at the minute is a lot. When you look at our first teamers that are not available, it really is starting to bite. We thought just as kind of Richie was getting back to it, that was starting to put players back into our attack where we needed them. But now we're struggling at the back and we're struggling in the attacking areas, with Richie seemingly going to be out. Timo is injured. Odebear is long term now. So we're going to rely heavily on our squad, on these young players. And at the back, the same kind of thing. No idea what the Romero situation is going to be. We do have an international break coming up, which may benefit us in some way. It might get us to the point where Romero is back available. And we'll see about Van der Ven as well. But they are stacking up in key areas, and we know that last season injuries and suspensions really pulled the bottom out of our season. So we've got to keep our fingers crossed that it's not that bad this year and that we can get players back. And I wouldn't be surprised to see us delve into the market in January, because there are definitely still positions where we could do with backup. January is a very hard transfer window to go in and buy first teamers, kind of first team ready, someone that comes directly in, because the really good players tend to be playing in good teams, or tend to be in European competitions, or tend to be in situations where, you know, the cost is extremely prohibitive to get them out of their contracts. So I wouldn't be surprised to see us go in for a bit of depth in January, maybe one or two signings. But overall, a positive day. Good performances pretty much throughout the side, except I would argue Romero, who I don't think had his best game. But we move on. It's an important one. I go back to the thing that I, bizarrely do, which is to compare last season's matching fixture. Obviously, we actually played quite well. This was just after our kind of devastating injuries and suspensions. We played quite well against Villa, but they came out with the victory. They took the points. They ended the season only a point, I think, ahead of us, or 2 points ahead of us. I can't remember, but yeah, 1 or 2 points ahead of us, but they took the points at our place. So we've now reversed that result. We've massively reversed the goal swing on it as well, from a 2-1 defeat to a 4-1 victory. But what we need to do is we need to go to Villa Park and put on a performance later in the season. So that's that next step that I'm talking about, is making sure that you go to Villa Park and you put on a performance. Last season we put on a fantastic performance and we blew them away. I don't know if we can do that, but the result is important for that game in terms of them being a direct challenger to us. So let's go up there. Let's improve on what we did last season, which is 3 points to each team. Let's see if we can take 4 off them this year or 6. And then nature of the performance at Villa Park and hopefully getting the result that matches it as well. That's the movement forward for this Tottenham team. I'll leave it there. Delighted to have a game like that to set us up for Sunday. It leaves a good taste in the mouth going into this week. And so we can all be delighted. And actually, the atmosphere in the ground yesterday was superb. So absolutely brilliant. So much so that I even found one of my neighbours walking down the road who had been to the game as well and who sits in the south. And yeah, bizarre coincidences where, you know, Tottenham fans were everywhere, were massive. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Have a great week, everybody, and come on, Tottenham.